Hello, and welcome to the Intelligent Gentleman Podcast. I am your host, Bill Walker, and today is a pretty laid back day. It's a pretty chill day, and decided that I would record a podcast for you guys just to kind of give my thoughts. And I think that's going to be the way we do this going forward. I don't want to set a specific time that you have to check to see if something's coming out or whatnot. Check it out at your leisure and support if you can. I have enabled monthly donations and monthly subscriptions, so you can do either or. The monthly subscription is only 99 cents a month. The donations could be however much you want it to be. So it's up to you. And you can set it up recurring. So you don't necessarily have to worry about it. But so with all that stuff out the way, to get to the point of this podcast. So I was going back and I was listening to some of the supporters who have left messages through the platform to me and how it impacted them. And I wanted to take this time to really just kind of recognize all the people who support, and will support the podcast. Intelligent Gentleman for me started off as just a means of putting my thoughts out into the universe through the medium of podcasting. I've always been told that I should do it. And it's always been a thought of mine too as well, but hearing it that other people would like to hear it, because it's one thing for you to want to do it yourself just to kind of do it, but it's another when people want to hear what you have to say. And I really do value everybody's feedback, and I really do value the time that people spend listening to me, because that's time they could be spending doing anything else. But they choose to listen to me because they find some value in what I'm saying. And that goes out to all the people who listen to it for whatever reason that you listen to it, right? Some people don't listen to it for that purpose. Some people listen to it for other reasons. But whatever reason you listen to it, I'm grateful for you listening to it, okay? So what I want to do is I want people to understand first that when it comes to me and my thoughts, I am not asking you to take on my thoughts as your thoughts. I am not asking you to take on what my experience and my understanding has brought me to. I'm not asking you to do that. But what I do ask a lot of times is that you think about it and that you keep an open mind to other perspectives. And that's not just limited to me. That's all perspectives, right? Even those perspectives that you may have dismissed at a different stage in your life, because what happens a lot of times is because of where we are or where we may be going or whatever the case may be, we may end up, not accepting certain ideas because of how we've already chosen to move, right? So we may have chosen to be for or against something, and so we feel that if we change that, right? We feel that if we change that, then we're somehow going against ourselves, or somehow, and for the most part, people feel like people are going to look at them and say, oh, you don't know what you want. Okay. The problem with this thinking is this, that if you are always confined to the way that you think about something, then that keeps you from being able to grow. Okay. So if we think about this, if I was to keep the same thought that I had in high school into my 20s, then how would I transition from one stage of my life to another, right? I wouldn't. I would be stuck in that mentality. And everybody, and I'm sure everybody can look back, because hindsight is 20/20. Everybody can look back and see a time in their life where there was a transition from thinking one way to another. To some, it may be something that's not so great, right? And then there may be other times where it was the best decision you made in your life, right? So as an exercise, I want people to do that. I want people to look back in retrospect and say, what were the times in my life where, because I took on a new thought, I was able to grow, or I was able to understand something deeper, in a deeper way, or any other way that it may have helped you, right? We know that the other side exists. We know that it's there, but we're not going to focus on that in this podcast, right? Because for me, the laws of attraction are very real. So when you start to focus in on the things that are not what you want, you end up getting more of what you don't want, because you're focusing on that. But if you focus on the things that you do want, right, then you will start to see more of that in your experience of life. I'll give you a very real example of this. People make fun of it. People post it and just kind of, all this kind of stuff. But it's a very real example of what the law of attraction is, okay? And some people haven't experienced this because some people haven't made it to this experience yet. But when you go and you buy a car, and just from that, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, I know what he's going to say. But when you go and buy a car, you're so excited. You're excited. You're like, oh, and then you pick something and you're like, oh my God, I love this car. Oh man, I ain't really seen nobody with it like that, whatever. And then it never fails, right? In your experience, it never fails that when you buy that car, you start driving that car, you start seeing more of that car on the road. Now, why is that? Why is it that you see more of it, right? One could argue two different points. They were there the whole time, you just didn't see it, or you just weren't paying attention to it. Or that because you have it, and that because you are focused on it, right, that you see it more often. Okay? Now, this is a very rudimentary example of this, but when you start to understand what that means, it doesn't mean that they weren't there before, right? It doesn't mean that. And I'm going to get into some physics, which ties to the metaphysics of it in just a second. But it doesn't mean that they weren't there before. It just means that now you are experiencing it more because you are focused on it more. That's all it means. And so that means both of those examples, both of those perspectives that I gave you are true. Both of them are true at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. Both of them are actually true. Okay, now let's get into the physics of that, right? Because I just read an article not too long ago, and I love reading about science, and I'm gonna start sharing a lot more of science and technology with you guys, because I that's my chosen field, and I do have a lot of knowledge in it, and I want to share it with you. But I just read a physics article where a group of doctors are receiving, or scientists are receiving, the Nobel Peace Prize because they have successfully proven that reality in its localized state is an illusion. Meaning, when you see something, right, that's what makes it real. Now, this has been proven by science now. So, in other words, and again, I was going to tie it to the metaphysics. It's been said in spirituality before, but science is now catching up with this and understanding the mechanism of how that works. And the example they used in the article was this: the color of an apple is red. We're just gonna keep it simple. We're gonna talk about red apples, okay? We know there's all colors of apples, okay? We're not gonna get into that, but just red apples, okay? We know that it's red. So when you look at it, it's red, right? Key part of that sentence: when you look at it, it's red. Okay. Now, what the scientists found was, and this is what quantum physics, quantum mechanics has enlightened us into understanding about the universe, right? Is that your experience, your observation of something in reality is what makes it real. And at a quantum level, you can choose which one is real. Meaning, so when people are talking about the power of manifestation, when you hear people don't really understand the science, and they don't really understand what's happening. Just like a lot of people don't understand how technology works. They just know what it does and they know how to use it, but they don't understand how it works. They couldn't build that same system. They couldn't build it, but they know how to use it. See? So the same is true for metaphysics, metasciences. When you may know how to use it, but you don't know how it works. Okay? So this is part of how it works. When you observe anything in its quantum state, meaning at its smallest possible state of existence, okay? And I use that word possible loosely because there's always, just like there's infinity going outward, there's infinity going inward as well. But we're not going to get into that in this podcast, okay? But what we are going to say is this: when you observe things in its quantum state, matter in its quantum state, you have one observation of that, okay? But when you're not observing it, it is in a state of quantum flux, or meaning it's all possibilities at the same time. And until you look at it, until you observe it, it remains in all possibilities at the same time. So what does this also tell us? It also tells us and confirms for us the multidimensional reality theory, okay? Because in order for something to exist in all ways at all times, well, not at all times, excuse me, in all ways when not being observed, that means it has to be in existence in all ways, right? Until you observe it. Now, we've only been really focusing on the outside aspect of this, right? And this is just to get you a clear understanding of what happens, okay? But now we're going to go to the most important and most powerful part of what I'm saying here. And that is your observation. See, you are the most powerful and important part of this existence. Why? Because you choose what it becomes. And you don't have to physically choose that. You choose it by your observation or your thought or see, it's not you're not physically changing anything. You are only observing it. And because you expect for something to be a certain way, you might see where I'm going with this now. But because you expect something to go a certain way, right? You actually make it happen that way. And I'm sure if you think, and I don't know, think is not the right word. I'm sure if you become aware of your thoughts, because your awareness is outside of your thinking. Your awareness is outside of your mind. It's not part of your mind. Okay? Think of your mind, and this will help you. Think of your mind as the screen of a computer. The awareness is the observer of that screen. Okay? Which is you. When I'm telling you about your inner self is that observer. It's not the body. It's not the mind. Okay? So it's the observer. And then in yogic traditions, one of the most basic yogic mantras is, I am not the body, I am not the mind. And there's a reason for that. Because it starts to bring to you the awareness that you are more than physical being. You are more than just your body. You are more than just your sensations. You are more than just your thoughts. You're more than that. Now, that doesn't take away the power of the sensations or the thoughts. It doesn't take away from that. But what it does do is it puts the proper power in the proper perspective. Because if you use your awareness instead of using your thoughts and instead of using your sensations, your body, you open up whole other dimensions. Tying back in what I was just speaking about when it comes to, and I just had a bee friend that just visited me and listened to me and then flew away when I said that. But you start to visit other dimensions. And I'm not talking about it in a spooky way. You see, a lot of people start going, oh Lord, or whatever. But we're not talking about it in a spooky way. We're not talking about in the way that, oh, lights and all. We're not talking about that. What I'm saying is this: you start to understand that you can create your own reality. You can create your own manifestation of whatever it is. But this is another important part about that, because even though it could include mind and body or matter or whatever the case may be, a lot of times what keeps us from even really seeing that or being able to do that in a conscious way is the fact that we are so engaged with the drama of life, right? And the drama of life has been created by others, right? So what do I mean by that? Yes, we're talking about the basic unit of this, which is you. But there's over 8 billion yous on this planet, right? And at any given time, they're all doing the same thing, right? So what does that mean? That means that it's in a constant state of change. That's why, change, that's why it's so detrimental to your health when you can't accept change, right? Because to your mental health and to your bodily health, because you're actually denying your own nature. Your nature is to change. It's not to stay the same. Nothing's nature is to stay the same. That's just, if you look at nature, you see that. So it's not about staying the same. It's about changing, right? Now, but when it comes to the supernatural or the metaphysical, that doesn't change. So again, if we use our simple construct of awareness, mind, body, okay? The awareness is not going to change. You're always going to be observing. Always. That's awareness. That's what it does. It observes, right? And I'm saying it to show separation only temporarily, because technically it's all part of it. It's all connected. So don't let it draw you away from the understanding. It's both true at the same time. Okay. All right. So, or in other words, they're both components of the same whole, right? Or they're all three components of the same whole. However you want to look at it. Okay. So awareness doesn't change. It's always aware. It's just aware. That's why it's awareness, right? Because it's just being. It's being. So it's there. It's present. It's always in you. That's why when people start to say certain things, I'm always saying you have everything you need inside of you. Everything you need is within you. That's why the ancients said that. Because you do. You absolutely do. And now that I just laid that out for you scientifically and metaphysically, that's what I want you to practice. That's what I want you to go into. I want you to go into, I know you want to say, oh, intelligent gentleman, I don't know what you're talking about, right? That's the easy way. That's the easy way. But the more exciting way to go would be to explore what I'm saying to you, okay? Explore it, entertain it, think about it. There was an exercise that the brother KRS-One did at a lecture at a university, because they pay the brother to go to universities to give lectures. Okay. That's how sharp this brother is. Okay. Yep, he's a rapper. He's old school. OG, whatever. But the brother's sharp. You know what I'm saying? But he breaks it down into a very simple concept, and then he says a very simple way for you to understand. And he used different terminology than what I just used, but it's all the same. See, that's one thing that we gotta get out of, is trying to separate this stuff, because if you truly believe everything is connected, then nothing is outside of that. Okay, so this is what he says. This is the exercise that he tells these college students to try to understand what he was saying about awareness, but he used different terminology. Okay. He said, everybody say rock star. And everybody said rock star, right? You can hear me saying it. You can say it yourself right now. And then he said, okay, now everybody say rock star without opening your mouth, without making a sound. Now, everyone who did that, who was listening to this and who was listening to him, you become aware of a certain thing, that you can hear the word. You may even can see it, visualize it, right? But yet and still, there's no sign in front of you. It's not written down anywhere, and there's no sound. So what are you hearing? You see, you're hearing without the sound. You're seeing without the sight. What is that? That is awareness. That is awareness. That is your connection to the divine. And as always, I'd like to thank you for listening to my podcast. And I hope that this inspires you to come back to your power of being a divine being, and takes you and propels you forward into your highest self. Okay? And I love y'all, and I really wish all the best to everyone. And I want to say thank you again. All right? So this has been the Intelligent Gentleman, and we're going to see you on the next podcast. All right? Possibly see you. And if you're listening to these words and you just did that exercise, then you could probably, since if you've seen some of my vodcasts, then you could probably visualize my voice, my face while I'm saying all this stuff. So now you know what that is, okay? And I love y'all, and I hope y'all have a great one, okay? And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.